Captain James Miller stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiant. His eyes were fixed on the main screen that showed the border between human space and the vast stellar empire. The ship hung in space like a knife pointed at the heart of humanity's greatest enemy. "Status report," Miller said. His voice was calm but firm. "All systems ready, Captain," replied Tom Foster from the engineering station. "The new shield is at full power. Weapons are charged." Miller nodded. He was a tall man, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. The crew around him worked quietly. They all knew what was at stake. For 20 years, the Stellar Empire had pushed humans back, taking colony after colony. The aliens thought humans were weak. They called humans soft creatures in their messages. The Empire controlled a third of the galaxy and saw humans as nothing more than pests to be removed. "Communications, any word from command?" Miller asked. Anna Wells shook her head. "Nothing new, sir. Our orders stand. Cross the border, show our strength, and return in 72 hours. It was a desperate plan. Earth's leaders had tried to talk peace with the Empire for months, but the Empire kept delaying, asking for more time. Intelligence suggested they were planning something big, something final. So here was the Defiant, humanity's newest and most advanced warship, about to do what no human ship had done in 5 years, cross into Empire space on purpose. "Mark, how many Empire ships are in sensor range?" Miller asked his tactical officer. Mark Reed checked his screen. 3 patrol ships near the border station. 1 larger command ship, nothing we can't handle." Miller smiled slightly. The Empire had no idea what was coming. 6 months ago, a damaged Empire scout ship had crashed on a remote human mining colony. The ship's technology was mostly destroyed, but human scientists had learned enough. The Defiant now carried weapons and shields based on Empire designs, but improved by human engineers. "Time to move," Miller said. "Helm, take us across the border at half speed. Let them see us coming." The massive ship began to move. The Defiant was beautiful in a dangerous way. Its dark hull was shaped like an arrow with 2 swept-back wings that housed the main engines. Unlike the round, bulky ships of the Empire, the Defiant was sleek and sharp. As they crossed the invisible line that marked Empire territory, alarms immediately sounded on the bridge. "They've spotted us," Wells reported. "Border station is scanning us heavily." Miller nodded. "Let them look. Don't respond to any messages, yet." Minutes passed as the Defiant moved deeper into Empire space. The crew was tense, but Miller seemed relaxed in his command chair. He had fought the Empire before and lost good people. This time would be different. "Incoming transmission from the border station," Wells announced. "Audio and visual." "On screen," Miller ordered. The main screen changed to show an alien face. Admiral Kren of the Empire was reptilian with dark green scales and yellow eyes with vertical pupils. His uniform was decorated with symbols of rank and battle honors. "Human vessel," Kren said, his voice translated by the ship's computer. "You have entered Empire space illegally. Turn back immediately or be destroyed." Miller said nothing. He simply stared at the alien commander. "Did you hear me, human?" Kren demanded. "Your ship will be reduced to atoms if you continue. The Empire does not tolerate trespassers." Miller nodded to Wells, who opened the channel. "This is Captain James Miller of the HSS Defiant. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration." Kren's scales darkened with anger. "Exploration? Do not insult me. That ship is clearly a warship, the largest human vessel ever to cross our border. Return to your space now." Miller leaned forward. "We will continue our mission, Admiral. If you wish to escort us, you're welcome to try." He signaled Wells to cut the connection. The alien's face disappeared from the screen. "That should get their attention," Miller said. "Helm, continue on course. Mark, keep an eye on those patrol ships." "Sir, they're mobilizing," Reed reported. "All 3 patrol ships are moving to intercept. The command ship is powering weapons." Miller nodded. As expected, battle stations. Red lights flashed throughout the ship as crew members prepared for combat. The Defiant's shields hummed to life, shields that could do something no Empire ship could counter. "Sir, I'm picking up communications between the border station and Empire High Command," Wells said, her fingers moving quickly over her console. "They're calling for reinforcements. 15 ships are responding." 15 ships against 1, Foster said with a small smile. "Hardly seems fair." "For them," Reed added. Miller stood up and walked to the front of the bridge, looking at the tactical display. The Empire patrol ships were forming a blockade ahead. They were Striker-class vessels, fast, well-armed, and normally more than a match for human ships. Normally. "They're in weapons range," Reed announced. "They're charging main cannons." "Defensive pattern Delta," Miller ordered. "Activate the mirror shield when they fire." The Defiant shifted position, presenting its smallest profile to the enemy ships. On the screen, green energy built up around the Empire vessels as they prepared to fire. "Incoming!" Reed shouted. Brilliant green beams shot from the patrol ships racing toward the Defiant. In any previous encounter, this would have been the end of the human ship. But as the beams reached the Defiant, something impossible happened. The ship's shields glowed with a silvery light, and the green beams bent around the hull. Then, like light hitting a mirror, they reflected back, striking 2 of the patrol ships with their own weapons. One Empire ship exploded instantly. The other spun out of control, its engines dead. "Direct hit on 2 targets," Reed reported, his voice tight with excitement. "The 3rd patrol ship is backing away. The command ship is holding position." The bridge crew let out a cheer, but Miller raised his hand for silence. "That was just the greeting," he said. "Helm, continue on course. Let's show the Empire what one human ship can do." On the Empire command ship, Admiral Kren stared at his screen in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "How did they reflect our weapons?" He turned to his second-in-command. "Send word to High Command. The humans have technology we don't understand. This is no ordinary warship." His eyes narrowed. "And order all available battle cruisers to converge on this position. Whatever this human ship is, it must not return to Earth." As the Defiant moved deeper into Empire space, Miller knew they had made the statement Earth needed. But this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the Empire realized that humans were no longer prey. They were predators. The Empire squadron grew larger on the Defiant's sensors. 15 warships now surrounded the lone human vessel, their weapons charged and ready. The ships were arranged in a sphere formation, leaving no escape path. "They've completely encircled us, Captain," Mark Reed said from the tactical station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he analyzed the enemy ships. 5 heavy cruisers, 10 lighter attack vessels. Captain Miller stood calmly, hands clasped behind his back. "Status of our systems?" "Mirror shield at full power. Engineer." Foster replied. "Main weapons charged. The new drive system is running perfectly." Miller nodded. Against 15 Empire ships, any normal human vessel would have surrendered or been destroyed. But the Defiant was far from normal. "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead cruiser," Anna Wells announced. "It's Admiral Kren again." "On screen," Miller ordered. The alien admiral's face appeared, his yellow eyes narrowed with anger and suspicion. "Human vessel," he hissed. "Your technology is unexpected, but it will not save you. You are surrounded by the Empire's finest ships. Surrender now and your crew will be treated according to war protocols." Miller smiled slightly. "Admiral Kren, we have no hostile intentions toward the Empire. We are simply demonstrating our right to travel through space." "Lies!" Kren snarled. "No peaceful ship carries weapons that can reflect our energy beams. No exploration vessel crosses a military border. This is your final warning. Power down your weapons and shields, or we will destroy your vessel." Miller looked around at his crew. Each face showed determination. They had trained for this moment for months. "I'm afraid we can't do that, Admiral, but I give you my word. We will not fire first." He signaled Wells to cut the transmission. "He's angry," Reed observed. "Wouldn't you be?" Miller replied. Their weapons bounced back at them. That's never happened before. The Empire thinks they have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. He turned to the crew. They're about to learn they're wrong. Energy buildup detected in all Empire vessels. Reed announced, "They're preparing to fire. All hands, brace for impact," Miller called over the ship-wide system. "Activate mirror shield and prepare countermeasures." The Defiant's special shield hummed to life, covering the ship in a silvery glow. Unlike normal shields that absorbed energy, this one used Empire technology, improved by human engineers, to reflect attacks back at their source. "They're firing!" Reed shouted. Green beams from 15 ships converged on the Defiant from all directions. The bridge crew held their breath. This was far more firepower than they had faced at the border. The shield flared brilliantly as it absorbed the energy, then pulsed. Reflected beams shot back in all directions, striking 3 Empire ships with their own weapons. 2 smaller vessels exploded instantly. A larger cruiser spun out of control, its engines dead. 3 ships disabled. Reed reported, excitement in his voice. "The others are backing off to regroup." Miller nodded. "Now it's our turn. Target weapons systems only. I don't want any unnecessary casualties. Show them what we can do." Reed's fingers flew over the console. "Targeting locked, sir." Fire. The Defiant's weapons were nothing like the simple lasers and missiles that human ships had used before. These new pulse cannons fired concentrated bursts of energy that could pierce Empire shields, like they weren't even there. Blue energy bolts shot from the Defiant, striking 4 Empire ships with surgical precision. Their weapon systems exploded in showers of sparks and metal. "Direct hits on all targets," Reed reported. 4 more ships disabled but crews alive. Miller nodded with satisfaction. "Continue the pattern. Weapons and engines only." The Defiant moved with incredible speed, darting between the Empire ships. Its new drive system, another technology adapted from Empire designs, allowed it to change direction instantly without the delay human ships normally experienced. On his command ship, Admiral Kren watched in growing horror as the single human vessel disabled ship after ship without taking damage. His tactical officer approached cautiously. "Admiral, we need to retreat and regroup," the officer suggested. "This human ship has technology we've never seen before." "Retreat?" Kren snarled. "From a single human vessel? Never." "Sir, they've disabled 7 of our 15 ships without a single casualty. They're only targeting weapons and engines. If they wanted to destroy us completely, they could have." Kren's scales darkened with rage, but he knew the officer was right. "Order all functional ships to pull back and send an emergency transmission. To High Command, tell them—" He hesitated, hardly believing what he was about to say. "Tell them we need reinforcements, as many as they can send." Back on the Defiant, the crew watched as the remaining Empire ships retreated. "They're backing off, Captain," Reed said. "We did it." "For now," Miller replied. "But they'll be back with more ships. Many more." Wells turned. From her communication station, her face serious. "Sir, I've been monitoring Empire transmissions since we crossed the border. I've detected something concerning." "What is it, Lieutenant?" "Their encryption is good, but our new systems can break it. They're talking about something called the Planet Killer." She looked up at Miller. "Sir, it sounds like they're building a weapon to destroy Earth. The diplomatic talks were just a delay tactic while they finish building it." Silence fell over the bridge as the implications sank in. "Are you certain?" Miller asked. "Yes, sir. I've cross-referenced multiple transmissions. This isn't just a regular weapon. From what I can piece together, it's designed to destroy an entire planet, specifically Earth." Miller's face hardened. "Our mission just changed. We were sent here to show our strength, but now we need to find proof of this weapon and warn Earth." He turned to the helm officer. "Set course deeper into Empire territory. We need to find more information about this Planet Killer." "Sir," Foster spoke up from engineering, "if we go deeper, we might not make it back. Even with our new technology, there are thousands of Empire ships." Miller nodded. "I know the risks. But if this Planet Killer is real, and we do nothing, there might not be an Earth to return to." He looked around at his crew. The choice is yours. I won't order anyone to continue this mission. One by one, the bridge crew nodded their agreement. They had all lost friends and family to the Empire's expansion. If Earth was threatened, there was no choice. Very well, Miller said. Wells, keep monitoring those transmissions. Try to locate where this weapon is being built. Foster, I need the engines and shield at peak performance. Reed, prepare defensive strategies for when we encounter more Empire ships. As the Defiant changed course and accelerated deeper into enemy territory, Miller stared at the stars on the main screen. What had begun as a show of force had become a desperate race against time to save humanity itself. The hunt had begun. Stealth systems active, Engineer Foster reported as he finished the final adjustments. We're now invisible to standard Empire sensors. The Defiant moved silently through Empire space, its hull now absorbing rather than reflecting energy. This was another feature the human engineers had developed, the ability to hide completely from enemy detection. Captain Miller stood at the center of the bridge, looking at the star map that showed their position deep in Empire territory. They had been traveling for 10 hours since their battle with Kren's squadron. How long can we maintain stealth? Miller asked. 6 hours at our current speed, Foster replied. After that, the system needs to cool down or it might damage the engines. Miller nodded. 6 hours should be enough. Wells, any progress on locating this planet killer? Lieutenant Wells looked up from her communications console. Yes, sir. I've pieced together information from multiple Empire transmissions. The weapon is being built at a place called Thorn Base. It's a research facility in the Vega sector. She displayed the location on the star map. That's 3 hours from our position, Reed noted from Tactical. Deep in Empire territory. What kind of defenses should we expect? Miller asked. Reed studied his screen. Based on intercepted transmissions, Thorn Base has the latest defense systems, orbital cannons, shield generators, and at least 30 ships on patrol duty. Miller frowned. Even with the Defiant's advanced technology, those were impossible odds in a direct fight. We need a plan to get in and out without engaging every ship in the sector. He called his senior officers to the briefing room adjacent to the bridge. Miller, Wells, Foster, and Reed gathered around the tactical table, which displayed a holographic image of the Vega sector. A direct approach is suicide, Reed stated plainly. We need something unexpected. Foster nodded in agreement. The Defiant gives us an edge, but we're still outnumbered 1,000 to 1. One ship, no matter how advanced, can't fight an entire empire. What about this? Wells pointed to a small moon orbiting the 4th planet in the system. Intelligence reports suggest Thorn Base receives supply shipments through this moon base. If we could somehow use one of these shipments as cover, Reed's eyes lit up. That could work. When is the next supply ship scheduled? Wells checked her data. According to the transmissions I've intercepted, a transport called the Drifter is due to arrive at Thorn Base in approximately 4 hours. If we could get their clearance codes, Miller mused, we might be able to approach the base without raising alarms. I can work on that, Wells offered. Their communications encryption is good, but our systems are better. Miller nodded. Get those codes. Foster, how quiet can you make our approach? With minimal power to non-essential systems, we could reduce our energy signature to match a standard Empire transport, the engineer replied. Good, Miller said. Reed, prepare a small team for possible ground infiltration. If we can get close enough to the base, we might need to send people in to gather direct evidence of this weapon. As the officers returned to their stations to prepare, an alert sounded on the bridge. Captain, called the sensor officer. Multiple ships entering the sector. Large vessels. Imperial battle cruisers. Miller rushed back to the bridge. On the main screen, he could see at least 10 massive Empire ships moving into position. At the center was a vessel twice the size of the others. What is that? Miller asked, pointing to the enormous ship. Reed checked his tactical display. According to Empire identification signals, that's the World Ender. Their most powerful, Warship, and... He paused, his expression grim. It's commanded by Admiral Kren. He's looking for revenge, Miller said quietly. Sir? Wells called from her station. They're scanning the entire sector. They know we're here somewhere, but they can't pinpoint our location while we're in stealth mode. Miller watched as the Imperial fleet spread out in a search pattern. Can they detect us if they come close enough? Foster nodded. Within 10,000 kilometers, their sensors might pick up our heat signature even with stealth active. Then we need to stay far away from those ships, Miller decided. Plot a course around their search pattern. We still need to reach Thorn Base. Captain, Wells interrupted. I've got something. I've intercepted the clearance codes for the Drifter. And there's more. The real supply ship has been delayed by engine problems. It won't arrive for another 12 hours. Miller smiled for the first time in hours. That's our window. If the real ship is delayed, we can impersonate it without worrying about the original showing up. He turned to Foster. Can you make us look like an Empire transport on their sensors? The engineer thought for a moment. I can modify our energy signature to match a standard Empire transport. From a distance, they'll see what they expect to see, just another supply ship. Do it, Miller ordered. Wells, be ready with those clearance codes when we approach Thorn Base. Reed, keep tracking those battlecruisers. I want to know if any of them come within detection range. The crew moved with purpose, each focused on their task. The Defiant changed course, carefully navigating around the searching Imperial fleet. On the bridge of the World Ender, Admiral Kren stared at the sensor display with growing frustration. His scales had darkened to a deep green, a sign of his anger. Nothing, Admiral, reported his sensor officer. We've scanned 40% of the sector with no sign of the human vessel. They're here, Kren insisted. That ship didn't return to human space. Our border sensors would have detected it. A communication officer approached nervously. Admiral, a message from Emperor Vex. He demands an update on the human intruder. Kren's eyes narrowed. The Emperor rarely involved himself directly in military matters. This human ship must have caused more concern than he realized. Tell the Emperor that we are pursuing the human vessel and will capture or destroy it before it can reach any sensitive locations. After the officer left, Kren's second-in-command spoke quietly. Admiral, what if they already know about the planet killer? Impossible, Kren snapped. That project is the Empire's most closely guarded secret. The humans can't possibly know about it. Then why are they here? Why send their most advanced ship deep into our territory? Kren had no answer. He returned his gaze to the sensor display, watching as his ships continued their search. Double the scan intensity, he ordered. That human ship has to be somewhere. Back on the Defiant, Miller watched as they approached Thorn Base. The massive research facility orbited a barren planet, surrounded by defense platforms and patrol ships. We're within communication range, Wells announced. They're hailing us, Miller nodded. Everyone ready? From this point forward, we're an Empire supply ship with engine trouble. Wells, respond with the clearance codes. Wells transmitted the stolen codes. The crew held their breath as they waited for a response. They've accepted our codes, Wells finally reported. We're cleared to approach Docking Bay 7. A cheer went up from the crew, but Miller raised his hand for silence. This is just the beginning. The hard part comes next, finding proof of the planet killer and getting it back to Earth. As the Defiant moved toward the base disguised as an Empire transport, Miller knew they were taking an enormous risk. If their deception was discovered, they would face the combined firepower of the base and its defending fleet. But the alternative, allowing the Empire to complete a weapon that could destroy Earth, was unthinkable. The hunt had brought them to the lion's den. Now they needed to steal its secrets and escape alive. The Defiant docked at Thorn Base, its exterior now resembling a standard Empire supply ship. Captain Miller gathered with Reed in the ship's preparation room, putting on Empire worker uniforms they had created based on intercepted visual data. These won't hold up to close inspection, Reed warned as he adjusted his collar, but from a distance they should be enough. Miller nodded. We won't have much time. The real supply ship will arrive in 11 hours, and we need to be gone before then. Lieutenant Wells entered the room, carrying data devices. These are programmed. To download information from Empire systems. Just place them near a computer terminal and they'll do the rest. Miller took one of the devices. Foster will keep the ship ready for immediate departure. Wells, you'll create a diversion if needed. He looked at them seriously. If we're not back in 3 hours, leave without us. Captain. Wells began to protest. That's an order, Miller said firmly. The information about the planet killer must reach Earth even if we don't make it back. Reed checked his small concealed weapon. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Miller and Reed left through a maintenance airlock, entering Thorn Base through a service corridor. They moved carefully, following the map Wells had compiled from intercepted base schematics. Main research section should be 2 levels down, Reed whispered, checking a small device that showed their position. They moved quietly, passing several Empire workers who barely glanced at them. Their disguises were working so far. They took a service elevator down to the research level. As the doors opened, they saw a massive room filled with Empire scientists working on various instruments. At the center stood a large holographic display showing a weapon of enormous size. That has to be it, Miller whispered. The planet killer. They moved along the edge of the room, trying to look like maintenance workers. Reed pointed to an unattended computer terminal in a corner. Perfect, Miller said. They approached the terminal and Reed placed one of Wells's devices next to it. A small light on the device began to blink, indicating it was copying data. 2 minutes for a complete download, Reed said softly. Miller studied the holographic display while they waited. The weapon was massive, larger than any battleship he had ever seen. Its design focused all its power into a single devastating beam. Look at the targeting data, Reed whispered, pointing to information scrolling beside the hologram. Earth's coordinates are already programmed in. Miller's jaw tightened. How soon until it's operational? Reed studied the display. According to this, 2 weeks, maybe less. The data device beeped softly, indicating the download was complete. Reed retrieved it and nodded to Miller. We need to place explosives, Miller said. Even if we can't destroy the weapon completely, we can delay its construction. They moved around the research area, placing small explosive devices in key locations. The bombs were another human innovation, tiny but powerful and undetectable by standard Empire security scans. As they finished placing the last explosive, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the base. Intruder alert. Security breach in research. Level 4. That's not for us, Reed said, checking his scanner. It's coming from the other side of the base. Miller smiled slightly. Wells created her diversion. Let's move. They headed for the exit. But as they turned a corner, they found themselves face to face with an Empire scientist. He was older than most, with pale blue scales and intelligent eyes. The scientist stared at them for a long moment. You're not Empire workers, he said finally. You're human. Miller raised his weapon, but surprisingly, the scientist raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. Wait. I can help you, he said quickly. My name is Dr. Lan. I'm the chief designer of the planet killer. That's not much of a recommendation, Reed said, keeping his weapon aimed at the alien. I was forced to build it, Lan explained urgently. The Emperor threatened my family, my entire world. I had no choice. His eyes showed genuine distress. But I never wanted to create something that could destroy an entire planet. Miller studied the scientist closely. Why should we trust you? Because I can give you the complete plans for the planet killer, including its weaknesses. Information. Not even in the main computer. Before Miller could respond, another alarm sounded, this one different from the first. Attention all personnel, announced a voice over the base communication system. Imperial battle cruisers have entered the system. Admiral Kren reports the human vessel Defiant may be disguised as a supply ship. All docking bays are locked down. For inspection. They've found us, Reed said grimly. Miller made a quick decision. Dr. Lan, if you're sincere about helping us, now's the time to prove it. We need to get back to our ship. Lan nodded quickly. Follow me. There's a maintenance tunnel that connects to your docking bay. We can avoid the main corridors. The scientist led them through a series of narrow passages. As they hurried, Miller contacted the ship. Foster, prepare for emergency departure. Wells, meet us at the maintenance entrance to the docking bay. Captain, Foster replied, the base has raised shields around all docking bays. We can't break free without risking severe damage. I can help with that too, Lon offered. I have override codes for the base shields. They reached the maintenance entrance where Wells was waiting. She looked suspiciously at the Empire scientist. He's coming with us, Miller explained briefly. He has information about the planet killer. They boarded the Defiant and Lon immediately went to work on a console entering his override codes. Shield control recognizes my authority, he reported. I can drop the shields around our docking bay for 30 seconds. Not enough time for the base security to react. That's all we need, Miller said. He turned to Reed. Detonate the explosives. Reed pressed a control on his wrist device. Throughout the research level, the small bombs exploded simultaneously, destroying key components of the Planet Killer project and throwing the base into chaos. Shields down, Lan announced. Now, Foster, Miller ordered. The Defiant's engines roared to life, and the ship broke free from the docking clamps. The disguise was no longer necessary. The Defiant's true form was revealed as it shot away from the base. Base weapons locking on, Reed reported from Tactical. Evasive maneuvers, Miller ordered. Full power to the mirror shield. The Defiant twisted and turned as it fled from the base. Behind them, Thorn Base's weapons opened fire, but the shots either missed or were reflected by the shield. Captain, Wells called. The World Ender has changed course. It's heading straight for us. Miller looked at Dr. Lon. You said you have the complete plans for the Planet Killer? Lon nodded. Everything is here, he said, holding up a small data device, including proof that it's specifically designed to destroy Earth. Miller turned to Wells. Broadcast that information on all Empire frequencies. Let everyone in the Empire know what their Emperor is planning. Wells hesitated. Sir, that will reveal our position to every Empire ship in the sector. I know, Miller said grimly, but it might be our only chance. If the Empire's own people learn about this weapon, some of them might turn against the Emperor. Wells took the data device from Lon and began the transmission. Broadcasting now, sir. All Empire ships and planets within range will receive this information. As the Defiant raced away from Thorn Base, with the World Ender in pursuit, the truth about the Planet Killer spread across Empire communication channels. The revelation that would shake the foundations of the Stellar Empire had begun. A lone human warship crosses the border. The Empire freezes in fear. Part 5. The Turning Tide. The Defiant raced through space, pushing its engines to maximum power. Behind them, the massive World Ender led a fleet of Empire battlecruisers in pursuit. Distance to Empire border? Captain Miller asked, standing firm despite the ship's violent maneuvers. 4 hours at current speed, the helm officer replied. But the World Ender is gaining on us. Miller turned to Foster. Can we go any faster? The engineer shook his head. Not without risking engine failure. We're already pushing beyond safety limits. On the main screen, they could see the enormous shape of the World Ender growing larger. The Empire flagship was truly a terrifying sight. A vessel designed for one purpose, to destroy anything in its path. Sir, Wells called from communications. I'm getting strange readings from across the Empire communication network. Our broadcast about the Planet Killer is causing reactions. What kind of reactions? Miller asked. Wells listened to her earpiece, her eyes widening. Rebellion, sir. Several planets in the Empire are declaring independence. Some Empire ships are refusing orders to pursue us. Dr. Lan stepped forward. Many worlds joined the Empire through force, not choice. They've been looking for a reason to break away. Learning that the Emperor planned to build a weapon that could destroy entire planets has given them that reason. Captain, Reed reported. From Tactical, the World Ender is in weapons range. They're charging main cannons. Evasive pattern Delta, Miller ordered. Ready mirror shield. The Defiant twisted sharply, narrowly avoiding the first massive energy blast from the World Ender. But the Empire flagship adjusted quickly, firing a second shot that grazed the Defiant's shield. The ship shuddered violently. Shield holding at 60%, Foster reported. But we can't take another direct hit. Miller gripped the back of his chair. Return fire. Target their weapons systems. The Defiant fired its advanced weapons, but the World Ender's shields easily absorbed the blasts. No effect, Reed said grimly. Their shields are much stronger than the standard Empire ships we faced before. Miller turned to Dr. Lon. Does the World Ender have any weaknesses? Lon thought quickly. The main power conduits run close to the surface near the engine section. A precise hit there might disrupt their shields temporarily. Reed immediately adjusted the targeting scanners. I see it. Firing now. The Defiant's weapons fired again, this time aiming at the specific point Lan had indicated. The blast struck the World Ender, causing a cascade of energy disruptions across its hull. Their shields are fluctuating, Reed reported. Now's our chance. Fire all weapons, Miller ordered. The Defiant unleashed everything it had, striking the World Ender repeatedly while its shields were weakened. Explosions bloomed across the massive ship's hull. We've damaged their main weapons array, Reed said. But their engines are still operational. Before Miller could order another attack, Wells called out from her station. Captain, incoming transmission from the World Ender. It's Admiral Kren. On screen, Miller ordered. Admiral Kren's face appeared, his scales now a pale green, a sign of shock or distress in his species. Captain Miller, Kren said, his voice subdued. I wish to discuss terms. Miller raised an eyebrow. What terms, Admiral? A ceasefire, Kren replied. I've received confirmation of your broadcast about the planet killer. He hesitated. I did not know the full extent of the Emperor's plans. You were going to destroy our homeworld, Miller said coldly. Kren's eyes narrowed. I am a military commander. I follow orders. But there are limits even to my loyalty. He straightened his posture. I cannot support the use of a weapon that destroys entire planets. Such power should never exist. Miller studied the alien's face carefully. What are you proposing, Admiral? I am ordering my fleet to stand down, Kren said. You may return to human space unmolested. In return, I ask only that you acknowledge this act in your report to your leaders. Before Miller could respond, another transmission cut in. On a split screen, the reptilian face of Emperor Vex appeared, his scales nearly black with rage. Admiral Kren, the Emperor roared. You are relieved of command. I order all ships to destroy the human vessel immediately. Kren turned to face his Emperor. No, Your Highness, this ends now. Your planet killer project was hidden even from your military commanders. It goes against everything the Empire once stood for. Traitor, Vex snarled. I will have you executed for this. You can try, Kren replied calmly. But you may find your support diminishing rapidly. Already half the fleet has received the humans' broadcast. Already 7 worlds have declared independence. Miller watched this exchange with growing amazement. The Empire was fracturing before his eyes. Wells muted the transmission temporarily. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching from the direction of human space. Empire reinforcements? Miller asked. No, sir, Wells replied, her voice filled with wonder. They're human ships, at least 20 of them, the Mo. Main screen shifted to show a fleet of vessels identical to the Defiant approaching rapidly. This is Admiral Chen of Earth Command, came a transmission. Defiant, do you require assistance? Miller laughed in relief. Admiral, your timing is perfect, but the situation has changed. He quickly explained the rebellion spreading through the Empire and Kren's ceasefire offer. As the human fleet joined the Defiant, Admiral Kren's ships moved to one side, no longer in attack formation. The remaining loyal Empire ships, unsure what to do without direct orders, held their positions. Captain Miller, Admiral Chen said, your mission was to buy us time to complete our fleet. You've done far more than that. You've given us an opportunity to end this war. Over the next few hours, representatives from Earth met with Admiral Kren and leaders from the breakaway Empire worlds. The beginning of an alliance formed, not through conquest, but through a shared desire for peace. On the bridge of the Defiant, Miller stood with his crew, watching as human and alien ships moved peacefully in the same space for the first time in decades. "Did you ever imagine it would end like this?" Wells asked quietly. "Not in my wildest dreams," Miller admitted. "One ship against an empire." Dr. Lon approached him. "It wasn't just your ship, Captain. It was what you represented. A species that fights not to conquer, but to protect." News arrived that Emperor Vex had been overthrown by his own royal guard. The Empire was transforming, breaking into smaller alliances and independent worlds. Admiral Kren later met with Miller face to face. The alien commander looked at the human with newfound respect. "We thought humans were weak because you hadn't conquered many worlds," Kren said. "We never understood that your real strength wasn't in domination, but in innovation and determination." Miller nodded. "And in knowing when to stand alone against an empire." As the Defiant prepared to return to Earth, Miller looked at the stars on the main screen. What had begun as a desperate mission had changed the course of galactic history. Humanity, once considered an insignificant species facing extinction, had reshaped the power structure of half the galaxy, all because one ship had dared to cross a border. The day the aliens arrived changed everything. It was a normal Tuesday morning when the massive ship appeared above New York City. Unlike the chaos portrayed in old movies, there was no immediate panic. Instead, people stopped, stared upward, and took pictures with their phones. The ship hovered silently, a gleaming oval that reflected sunlight in rainbow patterns across the city below. Commander Tom Adams was in his office at the Global Space Agency when the call came in. At 45, with graying hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes from years of stress, Adams was the most respected space program leader on Earth. "Sir, you need to come see this," his assistant said, voice shaking. Within an hour, Adams was on a helicopter heading toward the landing site. The aliens had set down in Central Park, their smaller shuttlecraft creating a perfect circle of flattened grass. By the time Adams arrived, military forces had established a perimeter, and world leaders were connecting via emergency video conference. "I'll handle the initial contact," Adams told the assembled generals and politicians on his tablet screen. "If they wanted to harm us, they would have done it already." As Adams approached the ship, a door slid open without a sound. 3 figures emerged, walking with a strange fluid grace. They looked almost human, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but their skin had a bluish tint, and their eyes were large and completely black. They wore what appeared to be simple gray uniforms with no visible weapons. The tallest alien stepped forward. "I am Captain Vox of the Galactic Alliance," it said, in perfect English. "We have been observing your world for some time." Adams introduced himself and led the aliens to a hastily prepared meeting room in a nearby building. Representatives from major world governments joined remotely, faces serious on large screens around the room. "We have come to formally welcome Earth to the galactic community," Captain Vox announced. "There are over 300 species in our alliance, spanning thousands of star systems." A ripple of excitement passed through the human representatives. First contact, proof they weren't alone in the universe, access to incredible technology and knowledge. But then Captain Vox continued. "We have classified your species as Level 2, capable of basic space travel but without practical faster-than-light capability." The alien's voice carried a strange tone that Adams couldn't quite identify. "This qualifies humans for limited membership status." "Limited membership?" asked the President of the United States. "Yes. Species at your development level can serve valuable roles in our alliance. Your people can provide raw materials, simple labor, and cultural artifacts. In return, we can offer protection and limited technological advancement appropriate to your level." Adams frowned. This sounded less like an invitation to join a community of equals, and more like colonization. The second alien, who introduced itself as Science Officer Mech, activated a small device that projected detailed images of Earth's space technology. "We've studied your propulsion systems, your space stations, and your theoretical models for advanced travel." The alien made a sound that took Adams a moment to recognize as laughter. "Is something funny?" Adams asked, feeling heat rise in his face. "Forgive me," Officer Mech said, not sounding sorry at all. "It's just that your approaches are so primitive. You're still using chemical rockets as your primary method of leaving your gravity well, and your theories about faster-than-light travel are mostly based on mathematical errors." The third alien, Security Director Loon, pointed to an image of the International Space Station. "This is your most advanced permanent structure in space. It would not survive a single micrometeor storm without our protection." For the next 2 hours, the aliens displayed Earth's space technology and systematically ridiculed it. They laughed at rocket designs, mocked spacesuit technology, and dismissed Earth's best scientific theories as charming attempts. Adams sat quietly, anger building inside him. He had spent his life dedicated to pushing humanity toward the stars. He had led teams that designed the most advanced propulsion systems on Earth. And now these aliens were treating humanity's greatest achievements like a child's crayon drawings. "Perhaps," Captain Vox said, "we can demonstrate what real space technology looks like." With a wave of his hand, another hologram appeared. The alien mothership. "Our vessel can travel between stars in days. It generates its own gravity, produces no waste, and could easily destroy your entire planet if we wished." The captain's black eyes fixed on Adams. "Though of course we would never do such a thing to a potential alliance member." The threat was clear, even if carefully wrapped in diplomatic language. When the meeting ended, the aliens returned to their ship with promises of more discussions in the coming days. Adams walked alone to the edge of the park, looking up at the massive alien vessel still visible in the darkening sky. "Commander Adams?" He turned to see Dr. Emily Reed, one of Earth's leading physicists, approaching him. With her wild, curly hair and intense eyes, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Did you notice something odd about their technology demonstrations?" she asked without preamble. Adams shook his head. "Just that they're centuries ahead of us." "That's just it," Emily said, lowering her voice. "They showed us their ships, their weapons, their communication devices, but they were incredibly vague about how any of it actually works. They never once showed us the underlying principles." Adams thought back to the meeting. She was right. The aliens had displayed their technological superiority, but had carefully avoided explaining any of the science behind it. "There's something else," Emily continued. "When I asked about quantum tunneling approaches to FTL travel, that one called Mech seemed nervous, like I'd said something wrong." "Or something right," Adams murmured. Later that night, Adams couldn't sleep. The alien's mockery played over and over in his mind. He stared at his ceiling, thinking about humanity's place in this new, expanded universe. If Earth accepted limited membership, humans would essentially become servants to more advanced species. They would be given only the technology the Alliance deemed appropriate, kept permanently in a subservient position. But what if there was another way? What if the aliens weren't telling the whole truth about what humans could achieve? As dawn broke, Adams made a decision. He picked up his phone and called the president. "Madam President, I need emergency funding and authority. We're going to build our own starship, using our own technology and ideas." He paused, then added, "And we're going to show these aliens that they've underestimated humanity." In their ship above Earth, Captain Vox and Officer Mech watched monitors showing Adams making calls, scientists being assembled, resources being gathered. "They're so predictable," Mech said. "Hurt their pride and they react exactly as expected." But Captain Vox wasn't laughing anymore. "Don't underestimate them," he warned. "There's something about these humans. Their unpredictability concerns me." "What can they possibly do?" Mech scoffed. "Their science is primitive. Their understanding of space-time is flawed." "Perhaps," Vox said quietly. "Or perhaps they just approach problems differently than we do." He zoomed in on Adams, now surrounded by Earth's best scientists, determination clear on all their faces. "Keep watching them closely," Vox ordered. "Very closely indeed." 3 days after the aliens' arrival, Commander Adams stood before the newly formed Global Response Council. The room buzzed with tension as representatives from every major nation waited for him to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adams began, his voice steady despite his lack of sleep. "We have two choices: accept the aliens' offer of limited membership and become servants to their alliance, or prove we deserve better." The Russian representative leaned forward. "And how do you suggest we do that, Commander? You heard them, our technology is centuries behind theirs." Adams clicked a button, and a holographic image appeared above the center of the table. A rough design for a spaceship unlike anything Earth had built before. "Project Longshot," he announced. "We're going to build our own faster-than-light ship." The room erupted in a mix of laughter and outrage. The Chinese delegate stood up, shaking his head. "Impossible. The aliens made it clear such technology is beyond our scientific understanding." "Is it?" Adams countered. "Or do they just want us to believe that?" He nodded to Dr. Emily Reed, who stood up and addressed the council. "The aliens showed us their technology, but carefully avoided explaining how any of it works. I think they're hiding something. Something they don't want us to discover." "Even if that's true," said the European Union representative, "how can we possibly develop FTL technology in any reasonable time frame? Our best estimates put such developments centuries away." Adams smiled for the first time in days. By thinking outside the box, by trying approaches the aliens might have overlooked or dismissed. He clicked to the next slide. "And by putting our best people on it." The image changed to show a woman with short blonde hair and intense blue eyes. She wore stained work clothes and had a pen stuck behind her ear. "This is Kate Miller," Adams said, "former NASA engineer currently running her own aerospace startup. She's been working on unconventional propulsion theories for years, theories that the scientific community mostly rejected as impossible." "If they're impossible, why are we considering them?" asked the Japanese delegate. "Because impossible is just another word for not tried hard enough yet," said a voice from the back of the room. Kate Miller herself walked forward, carrying a beat-up laptop under her arm. "And because the math actually works, even if it breaks some of our current understanding of physics." Over the next hour, Kate explained her theories. She spoke about folding space rather than moving through it, about using the quantum properties of certain elements in ways never attempted before, about harnessing dark energy as a propulsion source. Half the scientists in the room looked skeptical, the other half looked intrigued. "The aliens use technology that clearly works on principles we haven't mastered yet," Kate concluded. "But that doesn't mean we can't discover those principles ourselves in our own way." After heated debate, the council voted. Project Longshot would receive emergency global funding and resources. A new facility would be built in the Nevada desert, far from prying alien eyes. The best scientists and engineers from around the world would be quietly recruited. 1 week later, construction began on the facility. 2 weeks after that, the core team was assembled. 50 brilliant minds, all sworn to secrecy, all working toward what most considered an impossible goal. Meanwhile, the aliens continued their diplomatic meetings. They provided limited information about the galactic community, offered appropriate technology upgrades for Earth's agricultural and medical systems, and continued to subtly remind human leaders of their vastly superior power. "We've noticed unusual activity in your Nevada region," Captain Vox mentioned casually during a meeting with the UN Security Council. "Large shipments of rare materials, movement of certain scientists. May we ask what Earth is working on there?" "Weather monitoring systems," replied the American president smoothly. "Nothing that would interest a species as advanced as yours." Captain Vox's black eyes revealed nothing, but he nodded. "Of course, though we would be happy to provide simple weather control technology as part of our assistance package." Next day, a new alien arrived on Earth. Officer Zill, introduced as a cultural attaché. In reality, his job was to observe human activities and report back to the Alliance. "I'm very interested in human innovation," Zill told Commander Adams when they first met. "Would it be possible for me to tour some of your research facilities?" Adams smiled politely. "Of course. We'd be happy to show you our space center in Houston." He carefully avoided mentioning Nevada or Project Longshot. But keeping secrets from the aliens proved difficult. Their ships could scan for unusual energy signatures. Their drones, disguised as Earthbirds, observed from above. And they had planted listening devices in most major government buildings. At Project Longshot's facility, Kate and her team worked around the clock. They built prototype after prototype, failing repeatedly, but learning from each failure. They worked without using connected computers, drawing plans by hand, communicating, only in person to avoid alien surveillance. 3 months into the project, Kate burst into Adam's office, her eyes wild with excitement. "We've done it," she whispered, even though the room was regularly swept for bugs. "The mini prototype worked. We created a stable micro-wormhole in the lab. It only lasted for 0.3 seconds, but it was real." Adams felt his heart race. "How soon? Until we can scale it up?" 6 months, maybe less if we push harder," Kate said. "But there's a problem. The energy requirements are massive and the system is, well, it's not exactly stable." "Meaning?" "Meaning our ship is going to look like a nightmare. Multiple redundant systems, backup generators for the backup generators, cooling systems that will make the whole vessel look like a junkyard creation." Kate ran a hand through her hair. "It'll work, I think, but it's going to be the ugliest spacecraft ever built." Adams laughed. "As long as it flies, I don't care if it looks like a garbage truck." Unknown to them, Officer Zill had managed to place a listening device on one of the project's supply trucks. That night, he heard a partial recording of their conversation. He couldn't make out all the details, but he heard enough to be concerned. "The humans are attempting to build their own FTL vessel," Zill reported to Captain Vox. "It sounds primitive and dangerous, but they claim to have created a micro-wormhole." Vox's face showed the first signs of alarm. "Impossible. Their understanding of space-time is fundamentally flawed." "Perhaps," said Zill, "but they're approaching the problem differently than our scientists would. They're using methods our Science Council rejected centuries ago as too unstable." "Too unstable?" Vox repeated. "You mean too dangerous?" Zill nodded. "If they succeed, they could destroy half their planet. If they fail..." He paused. "If they fail but survive, they'll have learned enough to eventually succeed. Either way, the Alliance's control protocols for Level 2 species will be compromised." Captain Vox stood silent for a long moment, staring at the image of Earth rotating on his view screen. "Begin Phase 1 intervention," he finally ordered. "Subtle, sabotage only. Make it look like equipment failures, human error, nothing traceable to us." "And if that doesn't work?" Zill asked. Vox's black eyes narrowed. "Then we move to Phase 2. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. The Alliance hasn't had to sterilize a planet in over 300 years. Back in Nevada, Kate and her team continued working, unaware that they were now in a race not just for respect, but for survival. The prototype ship began taking shape in the massive underground hangar, a strange asymmetrical creation that bore little resemblance to traditional spacecraft designs. Adams stood at the observation window, watching the construction. "We're calling it the HMS Ugly Duckling," he told Emily Reed, who stood beside him. "It's not pretty, but if Kate's right, it's going to change everything." "If we survive the launch," Emily said quietly. Adams nodded grimly. "There is that." Neither of them noticed the small bird perched outside, its mechanical eyes recording everything. The first accident happened exactly 2 weeks after the aliens began their sabotage. A power regulator exploded in the main testing bay, sending shards of metal flying across the room. 2 engineers were injured, and months of work was destroyed in seconds. Equipment failure, the investigation team concluded. The regulator was operating within normal parameters, but something caused it to overload. Kate Miller wasn't convinced. She stayed late that night, examining the melted remains of the regulator under a microscope. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered to herself. "These systems don't just fail like this." The next morning, she marched into Commander Adams' office without knocking. "Someone messed with our equipment," she announced, dropping the charred regulator on his desk. Adams frowned. "You think we have a spy?" I think we have aliens, Kate replied. Look at this. She pointed to a tiny section of the melted metal. This part was heated from the outside in, not the inside out. Something external caused this failure. Adams leaned back in his chair. If the aliens are sabotaging us, that means we're on the right track, Kate finished with a grim smile. They wouldn't bother if they weren't worried. After that, security around Project Longshot tightened. The facility implemented random scanner sweeps for alien technology. Workers were checked coming and going. Even the air ducts were monitored for the aliens' tiny drone devices. But the sabotage continued. Computer systems crashed. Materials arrived. Contaminated. Test results were corrupted. Kate and her team adapted. They began using analog systems alongside digital ones. They triple-checked all materials. Most importantly, they started thinking like their opponents. If I were an alien trying to stop us, I'd focus on our power systems, Kate told her team one morning. So we're going to build redundancies they won't expect. Instead of one large power core, they built 5 smaller ones. Instead of following standard engineering practices with clear power routing, they created a chaotic web of connections that only the human designers fully understood. The ship began to take shape, but it looked nothing like the sleek vessels from science fiction movies. The HMS Ugly Duckling resembled a junkyard creation, asymmetrical, with odd bulges and protrusions, cables and cooling pipes exposed on the outside, patches of different metals covering its surface. It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen, Adams admitted as he and Kate observed the construction from the control room. But is it going to work? Kate nodded confidently. The ugliness is part of the design now. Each weird shape, each exposed system serves a purpose. The aliens expect us to build something that follows their idea of proper engineering. This, she gestured to the bizarre craft, this they won't understand. By month 5, they had achieved what seemed impossible, a working prototype of the full-scale FTL drive. It wasn't pretty. The wormhole generator required massive cooling systems. The dark energy collectors looked like giant metal spiders attached to the hull. But initial tests showed the system could create a stable wormhole large enough for the ship to pass through. Officer Zill was growing increasingly frustrated. His sabotage efforts were failing to stop the humans' progress. During his regular report, to Captain Vox he couldn't hide his concern. They're adapting too quickly, Zill explained. When we damage one system, they build 3 more to replace it. When we corrupt their data, they switch to paper backups. They're learning from our interference. Captain Vox's face showed rare emotion, alarm. How close are they to a functional FTL system? Too close, Zill replied. Their approach is completely unorthodox. They're using quantum tunneling theories that our scientists abandoned millennia ago as too unstable and unpredictable. And too dangerous, Vox added. Their ship could tear a hole in space-time itself. Or, Zill said quietly, it could work in ways our science hasn't explored. This possibility seemed to disturb Vox more than anything else. Increase sabotage. Efforts. Move to Phase 2 if necessary. Phase 2 might alert them to our direct involvement, Zill warned. Vox's black eyes narrowed. That's a risk we'll have to take. No Level 2 species has ever developed independent FTL travel. The Alliance protocol is clear on this point. Back in Nevada, Kate's team was dealing with a new problem. Their latest test had created a small but stable wormhole, but the energy requirements were far beyond what they had expected. We need more power, Kate told Adams during their daily briefing. A lot more power. Where do we get it? Adams asked. We're already using enough electricity to power a small city. Kate hesitated, then pulled out a rough sketch. I have an idea, but it's as crazy as everything else we've done. The sketch showed a modified nuclear reactor connected directly to the ship's power core, a design that violated every safety protocol in the book. You want to put a nuclear reactor on the ship? Adams asked, his voice rising. That's not just dangerous, it's suicidal. Not a traditional reactor, Kate explained. Something new. A cold fusion approach that Dr. Lee has been working on. It theoretically produces 3 times the energy with half the radiation. She paused. Theoretically. Has it been tested? Kate laughed. Nothing we're doing has been properly tested, Commander. We're making this up as we go. After much debate, they approved the new reactor design. Construction began immediately, adding another bizarre component to the already strange-looking ship. The night before the reactor was installed, Adams couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty facility to the main hangar and stood looking at the ship. In the dim night lighting, the HMS Ugly Duckling looked even more bizarre. A jumble of parts that somehow formed a whole. "You're worried." Adams turned to see Emily Reed standing behind him. The physicist had become an essential part of the team, bridging the gap between theoretical science and practical engineering. "Wouldn't you be?" Adams asked. "Tomorrow we're putting an experimental nuclear reactor on an experimental spaceship with an experimental FTL drive." Emily nodded. "It's terrifying. But also..." She looked at the ship with something like pride. "It's the most human thing I've ever seen." "Human?" "Look at it," Emily said, gesturing to the bizarre craft. "It breaks all the rules. It shouldn't work, but it does. It's ugly but effective. No other species would build something like this." She smiled. "The aliens are right to be afraid." The next morning, as the reactor was being installed, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security systems detected an energy surge from above, a powerful scanning beam from an alien ship. "They're done with subtle sabotage," Adams told the emergency meeting of project leaders. "They're moving to direct intervention." "We need to launch now," Kate insisted. "The ship isn't ready for a full FTL jump, but it can reach orbit. Once we're in space, we can finish the final calibrations away from their ground-based interference." "That's too risky," one of the government officials argued. "The ship hasn't completed safety testing." Kate laughed bitterly. "Safety went out the window the moment we started this project. Every day we wait gives them more time to stop us." After heated debate, Adams made the call. "Prepare for launch in 48 hours. Essential personnel only on board for the initial flight." The meeting ended, Kate pulled Adams aside. "There's something else you should know," she said quietly. "During our last test, we detected something unexpected. The wormhole we created didn't just bend space, it bent time. Very slightly, but measurably." Adams stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means our FTL drive might be more powerful than we thought." Kate's eyes shone with excitement and fear. "And if the aliens know that, they'll do anything to stop us from launching." That night, as the final preparations for launch began, Officer Zill made his last report to Captain Vox. "The humans are preparing for launch," he said. "Their ship is..." He struggled to find the words. "It's unlike anything in Alliance records. Chaotic, inefficient, dangerous, but potentially functional." Captain Vox's expression was grim. "Then, we have no choice. Prepare the Phase 3 protocol." "Planetary defense measures?" Zill asked, shocked. "But that would violate our non-intervention policies for developing worlds." "This is no longer about policies," Vox replied coldly. "This is about the stability of the Alliance itself. No Level 2 species can be allowed to develop independent FTL capability." He paused. "Especially not one as unpredictable as humans." As the alien mothership moved into position above Nevada, the countdown to humanity's impossible launch continued below. Dawn broke over the Nevada desert as final preparations for launch continued underground. The massive hangar doors above the HMS Ugly Duckling remained closed, hiding the ship from the alien vessel now positioned directly overhead. In the control room, Commander Adams watched as his team worked frantically to complete pre-launch checks. Sweat beaded on foreheads, fingers flew over keyboards. No one had slept in over 24 hours. "Status report," Adams called out. "Main power at 93% and rising," came one reply. "Hull integrity checks complete. It's not pretty, but it'll hold," said another. "Wormhole generator cooling systems online," a third voice added. Kate Miller sat at the main engineering console, her eyes red from exhaustion. "The FTL drive is as ready as it'll ever be," she reported. We can't do a full test sequence without alerting the aliens, so we're going in blind on some of the systems. Adams nodded grimly. What about our guests? Dr. Emily Reed looked up from her station. The alien delegation has accepted our invitation to observe from the diplomatic viewing area. They think they're watching a simple orbital test flight. She lowered her voice. They don't know about the FTL drive. Or so we hope, Adams muttered. At exactly 0700 hours, the alien delegation arrived. Captain Vox led the group, followed by Science Officer Mech and 6 other Alliance representatives. Officer Zill hung back, his eyes constantly scanning the facility. Commander, Adams, Captain Vox greeted with what passed for a smile on his alien face. We're honored to be invited to witness this test of your, what did you call it? The Advanced Orbital Platform, Adams replied smoothly. Nothing too exciting, just a new propulsion system for improving our orbital capabilities. How quaint, Officer Mech commented. Similar to the technology we provided to the Centauri system when they were at your level of development. About 300 years ago, I believe. Adams forced a smile. We're just happy to make progress. The aliens were escorted to the observation deck, a reinforced room with a clear view of the underground launch bay. Security personnel stayed close, watching for any suspicious movements. Below in the launch bay, final preparations continued. The ship's crew, Kate, Emily, and 3 other raw, essential personnel, boarded through the main airlock. The interior of the Ugly Duckling was as chaotic as its exterior, with exposed wiring, manual control systems alongside digital ones, and cooling pipes running along the ceilings. Cozy, Emily commented as she strapped into her seat. Function, over form, Kate replied, activating the main systems. Let's hope it all works. At 0730, Adams gave the order. Begin launch sequence. The massive hangar doors above slowly slid open, revealing the bright morning sky and the underside of the alien mothership hovering above. In the observation room, Captain Vox's black eyes narrowed. Your launch facility is directly beneath our vessel. Pure coincidence, Adams lied. We selected this site months ago. The alien captain didn't look convinced, but remained silent as the countdown continued. Inside the Ugly Duckling, Kate took a deep breath. Main engines starting in 3, 2, 1. The ship's conventional thrusters ignited with a roar that shook the entire facility. Immediately, warning lights flashed across control panels. Port thruster at a 132% capacity, one of the engineers shouted. Overheating detected. Coolant system 2 is failing, called another. Kate's fingers flew across the controls. Rerouting coolant from system 3, adjusting thrust balance. On the observation deck, the aliens watched as the ungainly ship shuddered and belched smoke from various vents. Is it supposed to do that? Officer Mech asked with undisguised mockery. New technology has quirks, Adams replied, trying to hide his own concern. The ship rose unsteadily from its cradle, lurching to one side before stabilizing. More warning sirens blared. A panel on the exterior suddenly broke free and crashed to the floor of the hangar. Your vessel appears to be coming apart, Captain Vox observed. His tone was light, but his posture had tensed. Inside the ship, chaos reigned. Alarms screamed from every console. The entire craft vibrated violently. Steam hissed from rupturing. Pipes, main power fluctuating, Emily called out. The reactor is cycling unpredictably. Kate gripped her controls tightly. Keep it together, just a little longer, she whispered. Whether to the ship or to herself was unclear. The Ugly Duckling continued its shaky ascent toward the open hangar doors. As it approached the exit, a loud bang echoed through the facility. One of the secondary engines had exploded, leaving a trail of black smoke. In the control room, Adams watched the disaster unfolding with his heart in his throat. The ship was barely functional, limping toward the sky rather than soaring. But it was still moving. Should we abort? His second-in-command asked quietly. Adams glanced at the aliens, who were now watching with expressions of smug satisfaction. No, he decided. Continue the launch. The ship cleared the hangar doors and entered open air, its ungainly form wobbling beneath the much larger alien mothership. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. The gleaming, perfect oval of alien technology hovering above the patched-together, smoking human vessel. Captain Vox actually laughed. "Commander Adams, I admire your determination, but this is becoming dangerous." He gestured to the struggling ship. "That vessel is clearly unsafe. Allow us to help you bring it down safely before your crew is injured." Adams ignored him, watching the ship's progress on the monitors. "Come on, Kate," he muttered. "Show them what we can do." Inside the ugly duckling, Kate made her decision. "We're not going to make orbit like this," she announced to her crew. "New plan, we're activating the FTL drive now." Emily looked at her in shock. "In atmosphere? We haven't tested that configuration." "No time like the present," Kate replied, with a grim smile. "Prime the wormhole generator. Divert all power from non-essential systems." The ship continued to rise, trailing smoke and leaking fluids, putting distance between itself and the ground, but still well within the atmosphere and directly beneath the alien mothership. On the observation deck, Officer Zill suddenly stiffened. His sensors had detected an energy signature he recognized. "Captain," he called out urgently. "They're powering up a wormhole generator." Captain Vox spun around, his calm demeanor shattering. "Impossible." He turned to Adams, fury in his black eyes. "What have you done?" Adams smiled for the first time that day. "We took your mockery as a challenge, Captain." Aboard the ugly duckling, Kate initiated the final sequence. Wormhole generator at full power. Creating fold in 3, 2, 1. The ship's bizarre external components suddenly came to life. The spider-like collectors extended, gathering dark energy from the surrounding space. The cooling systems vented, massive plumes of steam. The patched hull began to glow with an eerie blue light. In the control room, monitors showed energy readings going off the charts. "That's 10 times the power we expected," one scientist gasped. On the observation deck, the aliens were now in full panic. Captain Vox was shouting orders into a communication device. Officer Mech was backing away from the windows, true fear on his face. The air around the ugly duckling began to distort. Light bent in impossible ways. A swirling vortex of energy formed, directly in front of the ship, small at first but rapidly expanding. "Wormhole stabilized," Emily announced in disbelief. "It's actually working." Kate's hands flew over the controls, making last-second adjustments. "Preparing for FTL jump. Hold on to something." The ship lurched forward, systems failing catastrophically. Across the board, panels exploded, circuits fried. The nuclear reactor flared dangerously. "We're losing structural integrity," one of the engineers shouted. "We only need to hold together for a few more seconds," Kate replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. The ship reached the edge of the wormhole. For a moment it seemed to pause, hanging between normal space and the swirling vortex. Then, with a final shudder and a massive discharge of energy that knocked out power across half of Nevada, the HMS Ugly Duckling vanished into the wormhole. The vortex collapsed behind it, with a thunderclap that shattered windows for miles. Silence fell over the control room. Every screen showed the same thing: empty sky where the ship had been and the alien mothership still hovering above. "Did they make it?" someone finally asked. Before Adams could answer, the monitors picked up something new. A second wormhole was opening, not where the first had been, but nearly 1,000,000 miles away, just beyond Earth's moon. And emerging from it, still smoking and sparking but triumphantly intact, was the HMS Ugly Duckling. Kate's voice, broken by static but unmistakably jubilant, came through the communication system. "Control, this is Ugly Duckling. FTL jump successful. We just traveled to the edge of the solar system and back in under 60 seconds. In the observation room, Captain Vox stood rigid with shock. Officer Mech had collapsed into a chair. The other aliens were frantically communicating with their ship. "Impossible," Vox whispered. "Your technology, your understanding, it can't." Adams stepped closer to the alien captain, You know what I think, Captain? I think you've been lying to us. I think your alliance has been deliberately keeping lesser species from developing FTL technology. You don't understand the dangers, Vox hissed. Your approach is reckless, unpredictable. The wormhole you created could have collapsed into a black hole, destroyed your entire planet. But it didn't, Adams replied simply. Instead, we just changed the future of human space travel. He smiled at the alien. News of the successful FTL jump spread across Earth like wildfire. Within hours, videos of the strange ship disappearing into a wormhole were playing on every screen around the world. Humanity celebrated as the HMS Ugly Duckling returned to Nevada, its battered hull somehow still holding together despite the impossible journey it had just completed. The alien delegation, however, was not celebrating. In an emergency meeting room beneath the launch facility, Captain Vox faced Commander Adams across a plain metal table. The alien captain's normally composed demeanor had cracked completely. His blue-tinged skin had paled, and his large black eyes kept darting to the screens showing the human ship being examined by excited engineers. You don't understand what you've done, Vox said, his voice tight with strain. This technology was not meant for your species, not yet. Adams leaned forward. I think we understand perfectly, Captain. Your alliance has been holding back other species, keeping the real science to yourselves while feeding us scraps. Officer Mech, standing behind his captain, made a dismissive gesture. We have protocols for species development. They exist for good reasons. Whose reasons? Adams challenged. Not ours, certainly. Kate Miller and Emily Reed entered the room, still wearing their flight suits. Exhaustion clear on their faces, but unable to hide their triumph. Kate dropped a data pad on the table in front of the aliens. Our drive efficiency numbers, she announced. Our approach creates stable wormholes using roughly 40% less energy than your ships require, and our directional control is more precise. Impossible, Mech sputtered. Your technology is primitive, cobbled together. Primitive, yes, Emily agreed. But we approach the problem from a completely different angle. Sometimes the oldest, simplest path works better than the refined one. Captain Vox stared at the data for a long moment, then looked up at Adams. What do you want? The truth, for starters, Adams replied. Then we can discuss Earth's place in your alliance. I'm thinking full membership might be appropriate. The room fell silent as Captain Vox seemed to wage an internal battle. Finally he sighed, a strangely human gesture. The alliance is over 6,000 years old, he began. In the beginning it was as we described to you, a cooperative union of spacefaring species. But over time the founding species became protective of their position. You mean controlling? Kate interrupted. Vox didn't deny it. We discovered that when multiple species develop FTL technology independently, they often take different approaches. Some of these approaches proved dangerously unstable. Entire star systems were lost to collapsed wormholes and spatial tiers. So you started regulating the technology, Adams guessed. We standardized it, Vox corrected. All member species were taught the approved methods. Those who developed independently were encouraged to adopt our approach. Or else what? Emily asked. Officer Zill, who had been silent until now, answered. Or else they were isolated, restricted to their home systems. In extreme cases, their technology was neutralized. The implications hung heavy in the air. So what happens now? Adams asked. Your ship is still up there. You could destroy us if you wanted. Captain Vox shook his head slowly. Not anymore. Your broadcast of the successful jump has already been received by at least 17 worlds within range of Earth's transmissions. The Alliance Council is in emergency session as we speak. He looked genuinely tired now. The system was already straining. Several Level 3 species have been questioning the technology restrictions for centuries. Your achievement may have just broken the dam. Before anyone could respond, the door burst open. An aide rushed in, looking flustered. Commander Adams, we're receiving transmissions from multiple alien ships. They're approaching Earth orbit and requesting permission to land. Alliance ships? Adams asked, alarmed. No, sir. They identify themselves as representatives from the Proxima Coalition. They say they've been monitoring our FTL test and want to—" He glanced at his notes. "Establish diplomatic relations with Earth immediately, specifically regarding technology. Exchange." Captain Vox closed his eyes briefly. "The Proximans, of course. They've been chafing under Alliance restrictions for 300 years. Over the next week, Earth became the center of a diplomatic firestorm. Ships from 12 different species arrived in orbit, each seeking to establish relations with the humans who had broken the Alliance's technological monopoly. Delegations landed, marveling at the ugly but revolutionary ship that had changed everything. In the Alliance Council, long-standing power structures began to crumble. Species that had been kept at appropriate technological levels demanded access to Earth's research. The founding species found themselves outvoted for the first time in millennia. 1 month after the launch, Commander Adams stood before the newly formed Earth Diplomatic Council, Captain Vox beside him. The alien looked different now, less arrogant, more thoughtful. "The Alliance has voted to restructure itself," Vox announced to the assembled human leaders. "Technology restrictions between member species are being lifted. Earth has been granted full membership status with all rights and privileges." A cheer went up from the human delegates, but Adams noticed Vox didn't seem entirely unhappy about this development. Later, in a quiet moment, Adams questioned the alien captain about this. "You don't seem as upset by all this as I would have expected." Vox looked out the window at the sprawling facility where 3 new human ships were already under construction, all based on the Ugly Duckling's principles, but with improvements. "My species has led the Alliance for 4,000 years, Vox said quietly. "In that time, we've become stagnant. Our scientists stopped looking for new approaches because we believed we'd found the best one." He turned to Adams. "Your people reminded us that there is always another way to solve a problem. Even if that way looks ugly and dangerous?" Adams asked with a smile. "Especially then," Vox replied. "Progress is rarely neat and orderly." 6 months after the historic launch, Kate Miller stood on the observation deck of Earth's new space station, watching as the first joint human-alien mission prepared to depart. The ship was a strange combination of Alliance elegance and human practicality, sleeker than the Ugly Duckling but still bearing the distinctive asymmetrical features that made human FTL technology unique. Emily Reed joined her at the window. "Hard to believe how much has changed," she commented. "A year ago we were just another level 2 species being patted on the head by the advanced aliens." Kate grinned. "And now those same aliens are taking notes on our primitive approaches." She pointed to where a group of alien scientists were examining a human-designed wormhole stabilizer. "I heard the Centauri engineers have already incorporated our cooling systems into their new ships. The Alliance is calling it fusion engineering, the combination of multiple approaches to FTL theory," Emily said. "Apparently it's revolutionizing galactic travel. Ships can go farther and faster with hybrid systems." Kate laughed. "Not bad, for a bunch of primitives with a terrible starship launch." Below them in the docking bay, Commander Adams and Captain Vox stood side by side, watching final preparations for the joint mission. The relationship between them had evolved from antagonism to a cautious respect. "Where will your ship go first?" Vox asked. "The Orion Nebula," Adams replied. "Your scientists said it was too unstable for conventional Alliance FTL drives, but our calculations suggest our approach will work there." Vox nodded. "And after that?" Adams smiled. "After that? Wherever we want." He extended his hand to the alien captain. "Care to join us? We could use someone who knows the galactic neighborhood." After a moment's hesitation, Captain Vox took the human's hand. "I believe I would. Someone needs to make sure you don't accidentally tear a hole in reality with your unconventional methods." As they shook hands, the ship's engines powered, up with a sound that was part purr, part roar, neither purely human nor purely alien, but something new altogether. In the control room, technicians from 6 different species worked side by side, each contributing their unique perspective to the mission. On screens throughout the facility, The ship's destination was displayed, not just the Orion Nebula, but a map of the galaxy with countless stars marked as potential exploration targets. The age of galactic cooperation had truly begun, sparked by a terrible Starship launch that had changed everything. And no one was